Executive communication is not about being the loudest person in the room or about talking over people or being boastful. Good executive communication is actually about being smart and strategic. It's about focusing more on your audience and less on yourself, so your audience feels like they can trust you to guide them and lead them. This is great news because it means you can be a powerful communicator while being true to your authentic personality, and that's what we are going to learn in today's episode. Welcome to The Art of Speaking Up, a podcast that helps professional women access the limitless potential that lies within them. I'm your host, Jessica Guzik, and my mission is to help you find that spark inside you that has the power to transform your career in ways you may not have thought possible. I'm so excited that you're here. And now, on to the show. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Jess. I'm the host and creator of this show, and I'm also a career and leadership coach for women. I am here to help you build confidence, become a super powerful verbal communicator, and elevate into leadership in your corporate or 9-to-5 career. And in today's episode, we are talking about one of the number one most important skills when it comes to advancing professionally and elevating into leadership roles, and that is the skill of executive communication. When people hear the phrase executive communication, sometimes they feel intimidated. It can sound like this scary, hard, murky thing, and I want to demystify it for you in today's episode. So let's start by talking about what it is before I get deeper into some very powerful tools and frameworks that are going to help you get really good at it, even if you consider yourself a beginner. So what is executive communication? Executive communication is a bundle of skills that collectively all work together to make your communication super polished, powerful, and persuasive to even a highly sophisticated audience of corporate executives. Now, a lot of people think that to get good at executive communication, you have to make big, dramatic changes to the way that you speak and that it's really, really difficult. And in today's episode, I'm going to be illustrating the power of small, doable tweaks that will take your communication from just being so-so or okay to being super polished and powerful. And the way that I'm going to teach this to you is a way that I've never taught anything on the podcast ever before. And it all started one evening when I was watching Netflix, not at all thinking about the podcast. And all of a sudden, I was struck with some serious inspiration for this episode. I was watching a show called Owning Manhattan. If you haven't watched that show, it's very similar to Selling Sunset. And if you haven't watched Selling Sunset, both shows are about real estate brokerages. And in the case of Owning Manhattan, which is the show that I was watching, it's about a real estate brokerage firm in Manhattan, and it's about the head of that real estate brokerage firm. His name is Ryan Sarhant, and it follows his journey of growing the firm, and it follows the journeys of some of his top real estate brokers, and you see him and his brokers helping to buy and sell these really incredible, fancy properties all across New York City and the island of Manhattan. Anyway, I was watching this episode, and all of a sudden, my ears perked up, and my wheels started turning because something happened on the episode that is highly relevant to the work that I do as a career coach. What happened was Ryan Sarhant, the owner of the real estate brokerage, said on the episode that he had become too busy to continue doing all of the big real estate deals himself, and that he needed to start to delegate and get help from his team on some of his bigger projects. So I'm going to play you a short clip so you can meet Ryan Sarhant and start to get into the plot of the episode.
I knew when I started Sirhant that I would no longer be doing all of the deals personally the way I did for the 12 years prior. I've got like HR meetings, insurance meetings. I mean, there's things I got to do now. So I got to listen to the people around me and delegate more of the work that I have.
So as the episode goes on, we discover that because Ryan Sirhant is so busy, he decides that he is going to delegate one of his projects to one of his top real estate agents. So he has this big property in Manhattan and he has a relationship with the developer of that property. And the developer wants Ryan Sirhant to help sell that property. It's a penthouse condominium. But because Ryan Sirhant is so busy, he decides to delegate this project to one of his top agents and have one of his top agents be the sell side broker for this property. But he sets it up in a bit of a non-traditional way, where instead of him just choosing one of his top agents to be the broker for this property, he decides to pit them against one another in a sort of competition situation where they're going to compete and pitch themselves so that they can be chosen as the broker to represent this property. And he tells them that they're going to be pitching themselves directly to the developer of the property so that the developer can choose which agent the developer wants to be the broker for this property. So I'm going to play a clip where he's talking to his two top agents about this property and laying out his plan to delegate it to them. So let's hear what he says.
$20 million. Okay. Big apartments. I can't service it completely by myself. I can't sell $20 million apartments and build the entire company all at the same time.
Right.
So I told Harlan that I've got
This is interesting.
2 top producers.
Okay.
Right? And I want him to meet both of you. I don't want the decision about who's going to be on the listing be down to me.
Hold. It's not us together. It's just one of us.
It's one of you.
Okay.
Okay.
And then you're each going to pitch him as to why you.
Okay, so at this point in the episode, I was absolutely hooked because this episode had the two things that I care about most when it comes to helping you and when it comes to helping my clients. Number one, an opportunity to gain visibility and accelerate one's path to leadership. And number two, the opportunity to seize that path towards leadership by demonstrating excellent verbal communication. Both of these agents were asked to give a verbal pitch to the developer of this property. Now, at this point in the episode, I was completely hooked because literally one of the biggest things that I work on this show and with my clients and in my coaching and in my programs is to help women represent themselves and their work in a way that is potent and powerful. This is my zone of genius. This is my expertise. So I became really, really curious, number one, about what these two agents were going to do for their pitch. And number two, it became kind of a game for me because I wanted to hear both of them pitch. And then I wanted to guess who I think was going to land the opportunity based on how good their pitch was. And as I heard both of them share their pitch, which I'm going to play, so we'll get to hear it together, I realized it was such an incredible and juicy learning opportunity for the podcast because as they were delivering their pitches, I was immediately noticing what they were doing really well and where they had room for improvement. And I thought this would be a beautiful and super fun example to help you learn what good executive communication looks like and also what good executive communication doesn't look like. Because in their pitches, they did some things really, really well and some things not so well. And so there's enormous learning that can come from that. So the two agents who were pitching are named Chloe and Niall. And what I'm going to do in this episode is I'm going to play you Niall's pitch. He went first. We're going to listen to his pitch together. And then I'm going to tell you my thoughts and my evaluation on the quality of his executive communication. Then we're going to do the same for Chloe. I'm going to play her pitch, and their pitches are both really short. They're about 1 minute long each. But I'm going to play Chloe's pitch, and I'm going to give my evaluation. And most importantly, in these evaluations, I'm going to teach you the lessons that you will want to apply so that you know how to speak about yourself and your work in a way that is super compelling and in a way that will help you land these high visibility opportunities that are going to propel your career forward. After we've listened to the pitches, I'm going to tell you what my prediction was, like whose pitch I thought was better and who I thought deserved to get the opportunity based on the quality of their pitch. And I'm going to share with you what I thought it was before I actually found out the outcome of who won the pitch. And then I will also reveal to you at the end the outcome of who actually got chosen to be the agent representing this particular property. So this was kind of like a fun game for me of could I accurately predict who was going to nail this based on just the quality of their communication. And so it can be a bit of a game for you as well as you're listening to this episode. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to hear the first pitch, which came from Niall. And before I play it, I just want you to listen with an ear of like, what do you think he's doing well here? And what do you think could be improved here? So I want you to kind of listen, trying to discern, is this a strong pitch? Is this a weak pitch? And why? And then after it's done, I will share all of my thoughts and we will together learn what some of the implications and takeaways are. So let's hear it.
As you know, my name is Niall Lundgren. I'm one of the top producing agents. Last year, my team sold $100 million worth of real estate. We didn't do that by just putting stuff on the market, crossing our fingers, hosting an event or two, and hoping it sells. We're going to be strategic with social media. We're going to create output on a daily and weekly basis. If I'm not speaking to 1, 2, 3 buyers on a daily basis about a property that I have, that's going to be a problem. So what we do is we're also going to contact all of the other buyers that I have direct from my other $15, $20 million listings, and I'm going to cross-sell them on this. So I have the Rolodex. I have the people right now. Collectively, I've sold $250 million of real estate in my career, and I just want to add another $20 million. We are the best of the best of the best. Look, we want to bring the big guns in, and I am the big gun. I'm the biggest gun at Sirhan. I'm a cutthroat killer, and confidence is my middle name.
Okay, so that was Niall's pitch, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I found a lot of issues and problems in his pitch. So most of what I took away and picked up on were things that I didn't feel like were working. And we're going to break it down step by step, piece by piece, and I'm going to tell you exactly why each thing that he said didn't work well and what I would recommend he change about his pitch to make it more influential. So let's start with the first couple of sentences that he shares.
As you know, my name is Niall Lundgren. I'm one of the top producing agents. Last year, my team sold $100 million worth of real estate.
Okay, I'm sure you're having lots of thoughts about this, not just about the executive communication itself, but I definitely experienced an energy from Niall that felt very familiar to me. It felt like a very stereotypically male energy that I had been exposed to and experienced a lot of in my corporate career. You might be feeling that as well. But even putting that aside, I thought that the way Niall opened his pitch was weak and has real opportunity for improvement. And for me to explain to you why and to explain what the tweak is that he needs to make here, I have to teach you a concept called me communication versus you communication. There are 2 ways that we can speak to our audience and really 2 ways that we can frame the information that we're sharing with them. The first way, me communication, is when I frame my communication based on me. This is what Niall did in those first 2 sentences. He introduces himself. He says, my name is Niall. My team has sold X million dollars in real estate. Both of those sentences are about him. That's an example of me communication. You communication is when the speaker is not speaking about themselves, but they're speaking about the audience. So an example of you communication would be saying to your audience something like, I know that this revenue goal is really important to you, or I know that your team recently completed a big marketing campaign. That's called quote unquote you communication because those sentences are about the audience. Now, it's not that me communication is bad and you communication is good, There are certain times when we want to talk about ourselves, and then there are certain times when we want to talk about the audience. But the key is that this was the first thing that he shared. And when it comes to first impressions, it is almost always going to be more powerful and more effective to open with you communication, to open with something that is about our audience or about our stakeholder rather than ourselves. This is based on human nature. Our audience is always most interested in themselves and their goals, and they only care about us if we can help them achieve their goals. So for Niall to make the strongest possible impression in opening this pitch, I would recommend that he first reiterate what this developer's goals are before talking about how much real estate he and his team have sold. If he could just focus on the audience and that stakeholder, even if very, very briefly, that stakeholder would feel immediately engaged and interested. Psychologically, our audience is more interested when we talk about them and what they care about. Then he still could have highlighted his team's incredible accomplishments, and that stat that he shared about having sold all of that real estate would have landed way more powerfully, because instead of it just being him talking about himself for the sake of talking about himself, it's him talking about himself and his team's accomplishments so that his stakeholder can understand the potential benefit to the stakeholder. So I think Niall missed an opportunity to make a really solid first impression. And I don't think that he needed to overhaul the way that he opened this pitch. I think by simply acknowledging his stakeholders' goals and key desires before talking about his team's accomplishment would have made this so much stronger. Okay, let's hear what he says next.
Last year, my team sold $100 million worth of real estate. We didn't do that by just putting stuff on the market, crossing our fingers, hosting an event or two, and hoping it sells.
Okay, so like I said before, he's missed the opportunity to focus on his audience and to get his stakeholder interested by talking about what matters most to his stakeholder. And when I say that, it sounds so obvious, right? Like, to get your stakeholders interested, talk about what matters most to them. When he shares these next couple sentences and he says, okay, last year my team sold $100 million worth of real estate. We didn't do that by just putting stuff on the market, crossing our fingers, hosting an event or two, and hoping it sells. This is the point in his pitch where I was feeling like he had the potential to turn it around. I thought his opening was weak. I thought there was a really big opportunity there for him to tighten that up. But then when he went into this part, I felt like, okay, he's teeing us up to teach us what his team's secret sauce is. Because he's saying like, hey, listen, we didn't sell all that real estate just by like willy-nilly throwing spaghetti at the wall. And so then as the audience, what I'm wondering is like, okay, great. You guys did something better, something more special, something interesting. And he really creates an opening and a window, and I would even argue an expectation on the part of the audience that he is about to share thought leadership. Thought leadership is when we come in with strategic ideas that represent us thinking deeply about how to move the organization forward. Or in Niall's case, it would represent him thinking deeply about how he sells real estate really effectively for his clients. So by sharing with us that he sold all this real estate and they didn't do it by just throwing spaghetti at the wall, we as the audience are expecting him to now come in and share some thought leadership, some strategic vision. And I think that this is a place where his pitch had the potential to get stronger and turn around. So let's hear what he shared next.
We didn't do that by just putting stuff on the market, crossing our fingers, hosting an event or two, and hoping it sells. We're going to be strategic with social media. We're going to create output on a daily and weekly basis. If I'm not speaking to 1, 2, 3 buyers on a daily basis about a property that I have, that's going to be a problem.
So this is where I think that Niall missed his second opportunity to really impress his stakeholder. So his first missed opportunity is he missed the opportunity to reiterate what his stakeholder cares about most and to link his stakeholder goals to what he, Niall, can bring to the table to help his stakeholder. But he has the opportunity to turn his pitch around when he starts to go in a direction where he's suggesting that his team has a very sophisticated, special way of selling real estate. As an audience, we're very excited to find out what that is and hear his thought leadership. And then we don't get any. So the next thing that he shares after telling us how different and unique and special his team is that they're going to advertise the property on social media. Now, there's nothing wrong with advertising the property on social media, but he's missed the opportunity to paint a bigger picture strategy. He's missed the opportunity to bring thought leadership, show us something special, show us something innovative, show us that you have a top-down, cohesive approach and plan. That is ultimately what is going to impress the stakeholder. And this is what leads me to another lesson and takeaway for you, which is that to be impressive to executive stakeholders, we really want to be top down in the way we share information. We want to share overarching ideas, overarching concepts, thought leadership. We don't want to be taking our audience straight into tactics, because when we take them straight into tactics, they don't get exposed to our higher level thinking. Niall could have showed this developer his higher level thinking. He could have painted a powerful picture of his team's philosophy and strategy and how that helps them sell real estate. But instead, he just talks about a tactic that they use, which is social media. And there is no thought leadership present there. Most real estate agents use social media. Again, there's nothing wrong with it, but this developer isn't going to be surprised or impressed by that. It's very tactical. It's very familiar. And also, this stakeholder, this developer, has no way of understanding how Niall thinks at a broader strategic level because he is not showing us that. So that is the second place where I think he really misses the opportunity to impress his stakeholder and just be really compelling in his pitch. I'm going to skip past some of the middle of his pitch because he kind of repeats more tactics and it's just more of what I already talked about, which is him missing that opportunity to show thought leadership and be top down. And I'm going to cut to the very end of his pitch and talk about how he closed it out and what my thoughts are on that. So let's listen to the very end of Niall's pitch.
We are the best of the best of the best. Look, we want to bring the big guns in, and I am the big gun. I'm the biggest gun at Sirhan. I'm a cutthroat killer, and confidence is my middle name.
Okay, so remember at the beginning when I talked about me communication versus you communication? Niall ends his pitch with like a super surge of me communication. And he talks about how he's the big guns and confidence is his middle name. And my thoughts on this is that this is a very, very risky way to address an audience, especially an audience that you're trying to impress and win over. Obviously, he's coming in big, trying to demonstrate his confidence. What he's trying to communicate at a deeper level is like, I am very secure within myself. I am very confident. When you work with me, you're getting someone who's going to get in there and get it done. The problem is his language and the way that he talks about himself is so strong and exaggerated that he's raising the risk of turning off his stakeholder, of making his stakeholder feel put off by the way that he's talking about himself. So he's running the risk of stepping into overconfidence. What I would argue about the way that he closes out his pitch is that if someone hears something like this, they're either going to hate it and feel really turned off by it, or love it and feel really energized and jazzed up by it. And there's not going to be a lot of neutral people in the middle who are going to be like, oh yeah, the way that Niall ended his pitch was like totally fine, whatever. Like you're either going to respond really well or really poorly to such an intense sort of self-aggrandization, which is what he's doing here. And this is risky because if we're going to speak this way, we want to know the stakeholder. We want to know that they're going to appreciate this kind of rhetoric, that it's going to land with them. And if we don't know that, we don't want to take that risk. We want to make sure that we end with something that's going to feel impressive to them and not feel overly exaggerated. And also, the point that I shared before comes back here again, which is that, remember, we want to talk about our audience and what gets them excited. So once again, Niall missed a really powerful opportunity at the end to just say something, like, I'm the big guns, confidence is my middle name. And when I'm representing your property, you can rest easy knowing that I will be fighting hard to get you a sale and I will not let anything get past this, right? If he had added that in, all of a sudden it becomes more effective because it's not just him talking about himself, it's him demonstrating value to the stakeholders. And the lesson for you here is that when you are talking to executives, to leaders at your company, it's not about you making yourself look good. And hopefully that comes as a relief because I know for a lot of us, we don't want to be so self-absorbed. We don't want to communicate the way that Niall communicates. What it's actually about is showing your stakeholders how you can help them and how you can create value for them. And Niall's entire pitch revolves around him and not the stakeholder. And I'm not even saying this in a way to make fun of him or belittle him, although I do have some thoughts that I'll be sharing later on. But I'm sharing it from a strategic perspective. If we go in only talking about ourselves and we don't focus on the stakeholder and we're only in the me communication and we don't have any you communication, we miss an enormous opportunity to get them excited, to get them emotionally engaged, and to really show them how we can help them achieve their goals. So what I want you to take away from this part of this analysis that I'm doing of this TV episode is, number one, you want to focus on your stakeholders and you want to remember that what they care about most is themselves. So when you're opening and you're about to share something, make sure that you open by sharing something that you know they care about and they will have a positive response to. And you want to do that throughout. You want to constantly be thinking, how does this help them? A really great way to understand what I'm teaching you is to think about a job interview. In a job interview, you are being asked to talk about yourself, but you're going to interview way more effectively if every time you talk about yourself, you loop it back to how that trait is going to help your potential boss or the company you're interviewing with achieve their goals. So if they say, what are your strongest qualities? Instead of saying, I'm really strategic and I'm great at solving problems, if you say, I'm really strategic and I'm great at solving problems, and I would love to bring that here to help with the growth that this organization is currently experiencing, all of a sudden, you've delivered a way more powerful interview. And I can guarantee you that the second answer is probably the answer that's going to get invited to the next round of interviews or going to land the roles. So the first thing that I want you to take away is to talk about your audience. Keep reminding them how it's going to help them. And the second thing that I want you to take away is, as you're sharing information, make sure that before you dive into details, before you dive into tactics, that you're sharing bigger picture ideas and visions. Executives respond best to what you're sharing when you start with a big, broad, sweeping idea or vision, and then you break it into details and tactics and smaller pieces. And Niall just jumped straight into I'm a great real estate agent. I'm going to market your property on social media. Pick me, pick me, pick me. And he missed an opportunity to fill in the blank of I'm a great real estate agent. Here's my strategy that makes me so great. Oh, it happens to also involve social media, and here's how that will help you. So there's just so much that he could have done to make this stronger. And I honestly feel like I could keep talking about this for a whole other 30 minutes because there's so much richness in what he shared. But I also want to make sure to cover the other pitch. So you are actually going to get a part 2 of this episode series. In part 2, we're going to hear the second pitch. This is the pitch from Chloe. I'm going to break it down. I'm going to teach you some really important lessons on executive communication based on her pitch. And then I'm going to share with you who I thought deserved to win this pitch competition for the property. Obviously, you probably have a guess as to who that is. But then more importantly, I'm going to reveal what happened at the end of the episode, who actually got it. Because as I was watching this episode, I was super curious if the pitch that I thought was the stronger one, which, spoiler, Chloe's was way stronger, but I was super curious if the stronger pitch was the pitch that was going to get picked. So I will reveal that when I get into part 2, which I'm going to try to drop as soon as I possibly can because you might be ready to dive in and listen to that one. And by the way, if you want to watch this entire episode and see the entire plot play out and watch their pitches, watch Owning Manhattan on Netflix. This is from episode 1. You will see them get into this right away, and it will probably help you deepen the learnings of today's episode. So your homework for today's episode is to watch some TV, watch some Netflix, unless you want to avoid the spoiler of knowing how it turns out, which obviously I'm going to share in part 2. So I hope you loved this episode. Please share it with someone you know if you enjoyed it, if it was fun, if it helped you learn, and I will catch you in part 2. Bye.